And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Xanadu Gallery Art Business Academy online critique group session. It's a mouthful. It's good to be here with you on a Wednesday morning. Today's session is an Ask Me Anything session. As we get started, though, I did want to, just by way of announcement, to let you know that, and in fact, let me pull it up here so we're looking at it. I mentioned last week that we were going to be making some modifications to the broadcast page to allow those of you who are attending these live weekly sessions or watching the recordings to submit your artwork for consideration for review in a future session. Up to this point, we've been sending out invitations to a limited group of subscribers to red.blog. But we would love to get those of you who are attending, love to give you an opportunity to have your artwork reviewed. And so if you will notice on the broadcast page where you're likely clicked in to attend this session, if you scroll down past the table that shows the start time for the various time zones, and let me go ahead and pull this up here. You will notice that there is now a section that says submit your art for review in a future online critique group session. And there is a link there. That will take you to a form that allows you to upload images of your artwork and answer some simple questions for consideration for future review. So for any of you who would like to sit in the critique hot seat and join us in a future session, have your work reviewed, this is your opportunity to do that. Just make a note, there's no huge rush. We take time reviewing the applications that have been submitted. I still have a number of applications that have been submitted to those folks that we invited through the blog. But this is an opportunity for you to get your work into the queue for possible review. Now with that, I do want to jump right into the questions that were submitted today. We've got again, as usual, for these Ask Me Anything sessions, I've received a huge number of great questions. I am going to try to get to as many of these questions as I can in this session. Probably not going to be quite as much discussion from panelists as there normally would be in an effort to give responses to as many of these as we can, but we will try to get a little bit of discussion going. And if I have you, if I pull up your question and you happen to be in the video panel and want to hop in and share a little bit more about the situation or just ask the question in person instead of having me read it, I'll invite you to do that as well. So our first question comes from Mary Hubley in Florida. And the question is, high key or low key? That is the question. I do lots of low key painting. Wonder if your customers are more interested in lighter, cheerier moods, and analyze why. Now, I'm going to object a little because this feels a little bit like a leading question that Mary, it seems to me, has a suspicion that lighter, cheerier work is what's getting more attention in the art market. You know, as a result of that, maybe feels that she's at a little bit of a disadvantage in promoting and selling her work. And I have to always be a little bit careful about answering these kinds of questions. And they always do come up. We're going to see several different variations of this kind of question where an artist is asking, is the work that I'm doing sellable and marketable? Is there some aspect of what I'm doing that is preventing me from being as successful? You know, are there trends out there that are playing against me? And like I say, I have to be a little bit careful about that because the feedback that I might give you, first of all, is going to be somewhat biased just from my experience in my gallery and from the work that we carry, which is not by any means a representative outlook on the broader art market. We are in a very diverse marketplace. From gallery to gallery, you'll see a wide range of different styles of art, different approaches, and so that is the caveat here. what I will tell you is that, and I'll pull up a couple of quick examples here of artwork that we have sold through Xanadu Gallery. And you're going to see examples of both. Obviously we're all going to have different definitions, but here is a piece. This is an 84-inch tall by, I believe, 30 or 36-inch wide photography-based piece of artwork. The artist is Tim White. And so it's a photo in the center, and then he creates a frame and does some mixed media work with that. And from that question, I would say this definitely has a moodiness to it, low key, if you will. And the client who purchased this piece fell in love with that atmosphere that this piece created. And it fit perfectly. I tried to find a photo. I had a photo of the piece installed in the client's home. I couldn't lay my hands on that, but it just looked terrific. A very contemporary home in Scottsdale. The client just really responded to that atmosphere. And in fact, loved it so much that he commissioned the artist to do a companion piece for it, same scale, same size, kind of similar in tone and subject matter, to flank either side of an entryway window, and just fell in love with it. And I would say, here's another piece that, again, just tonally and atmosphere. I would think, and Mary, you can follow up with an email if you want to correct me in what I'm thinking, but I think also kind of has more of that, more of those kinds of atmospherics. So, again, based purely on personal experience, my experience is that clients will respond to work in a variety of different tones and different subjects and different approaches. Then I can switch gears and say we've also sold work that is bright and energetic and maybe more up tempo and has less of that. And so it's just I will always caution you not to spend too much time overthinking what's going to sell and what's not going to sell. If you are excited by the work that you're doing that is a little darker and moodier, and boy, I gave what I would consider to be pretty mild examples of that. I've seen work that is much more tonally darker and maybe even has ominous overtones, and there are clients who really will respond to that. I saw a couple of hands go up, so let me get you in if I can here. Hold on. And I'd love to get a couple of you into the conversation. Here we go. I think I see that. Hold on. I thought I saw a couple of hands up. If you have, forgive me. I show that there are hands up, but I can't see. There we go. Sandy, let me get to Sandy first. And Sandy, if you can go ahead and unmute, I'd love to hear your comments on this discussion.
Well, I've been wanting to ask you, but let's see, do I turn that off?
Yep, you're good. I've got you.
Oh, you're okay? Okay. I have always I consider myself a painter. However, I have always done these wall hangings, and I call them baskets, but they're not, with different wires and things. And if I'm in a festival, a fair, an art fair or anything, I always put in my baskets and my wall hangings. They sell like crazy. If people see them, then they sell. But I consider myself a painter, and I don't feel, even after all these years, I don't feel that I've come to the point that this is me. This is really, I keep changing. I go from portraits to,
Sure.
So I am a bit older, and so I wonder, maybe the rest of my time, I wonder if I could come full blast with my my wall hangings and stuff, because I can change that around,
Yeah.
that's very creative for me also. But my heart is, I love to paint,
Yeah.
It's really a
You know, it points to the same kind of questions where we're thinking about kind of what is our direction and how's the market going
yeah,
to respond. And you know what I would say is that yes, we should certainly follow our passion and what we're excited about. And you'll hear me say it over and over again. We can find a marketplace for the work that you're doing, be it the paintings or the wall hangings, be it upbeat or down tempo. We can find the markets for those. At the same time, Sandy, what it sounds like to me is that you have found let's call it, for lack of a better way of saying it, you've found something that could really serve as bread and butter when it comes to generating some cash flow for you. You
right.
have found a creative outlet that people really respond to, that sells well, and you would ignore that at your own peril. And if you enjoy doing both, it sounds to me like you could really build both of those into successful businesses. But the wall hangings already have a following and are already generating sales.
Yeah.
I would kind of think of it like this: what can I do to build and expand that line of creative work that I'm doing, where I'm already getting a response and I already know there's a market for it? What could I do to kind of multiply the sales there? And in the meantime, I'll keep painting and keep working towards building a following for that work as well. But if the wall hangings are the vein that is producing the sales, it certainly would make sense to pursue that cash flow, and in some ways allow it to then serve as a bootstrap to build your painting business as well. So, Sandy, what I'm saying is, don't rest, work hard,
Yeah, right.
and devote time to both of those, and build successful businesses around both.
Mhm. All righty, thank you. And then the wall hangings, I get a lot. Well, what I consider a lot of money.
Yeah.
You
Uh,
know,
I
two
mean, it
thousand
sounds like a winning
dollars.
formula. We would all love to have that kind of problem where,
Yeah.
we're trying to decide
Mentally,
between
it's a
two
problem,
positive
but I want to
directions.
take over. Mentally.
Yep.
Thank you
Excellent.
very much.
You bet. Let me go now to a question from Denise. And this Denise is from Fayetteville, Arkansas. And her question is, what's the best form of payment in the event someone looking at my website wants to buy art? I recently had a visitor to my Instagram ask if I would accept check for a specific piece of art they saw on my website. Knowing that check payment is risky, I told them that I do not accept checks, but would accept electronic payment. Did I answer them correctly? And what would be the best form of payment in the event someone looking at my website wants to buy art? The message on my Instagram was rather suspicious, so I'm being very cautious. And I think this is wise. Many of you will have seen a repost that I did recently on an interaction that I had with an online buyer that was turned out clearly to be a scam. And I am just seeing a proliferation of these attempts by scammers to get entangled with artists, ask them if they'll accept a check payment. And it's a complicated scheme that they use where they send you more in the check than you're asking for, have you send some of the funds to a supposed shipping company. And then when the check bounces, you are out of those funds that you sent to the shipping company. And it is so frustrating and despicable. And I'm seeing that at first it was pretty easy to determine which of these supposed inquiries about artwork were legitimate and which weren't. There were issues with the grammar and problems with the kind of the whole story that was going on. But what I'm finding is that these attempts at defrauding you are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they're figuring out that they need to vary, and they know that a lot of their targets are onto them. And so yes, I would be very careful. And truthfully, the challenge, right, is that we want to be careful not to scare away or offend a legitimate potential buyer who has approached us online. That's the reason we have our websites. But it would be wise to develop a procedure for processing payments and responding to those clients, so that you can be ready to work with a legitimate client and weed out these scam attempts. In most cases, I would suggest that using something like a Square or PayPal, and requesting payment via credit card or electronic payment would be the best way to proceed. Although even there, you could potentially run into some issues if they've stolen a credit card number. Absolutely, though, and we deal with these all the time. And I have international sales that we're handling online. Um, we take care of the shipment. This seems to be the vector that a lot of them are coming by, is looking for some kind of scam that involves their own shipping company. And we just let them know, here's how we handle sales. We accept credit card payment. Once that payment processes, it'll take about a week to 10 days for the artwork to be packaged and prepared for shipping. We will arrange the shipping and get it on its way to you. And so having that procedure, demanding electronic payment, having a time between the credit card processing and the shipment, that seems to eliminate most of these fraudulent inquiries. They're looking for easy targets. And so if you have a plan in place to process those kinds of sales, you will weed most of them out. But Denise, very wise to proceed with caution in those instances. Okay, the next question from Vanessa in Texas is about galleries. And it's a little bit of an uncomfortable question for me, because as a gallery owner, I happen to know what Vanessa is saying here has some truth to it. And she says, why do galleries treat artists as if they don't exist, even when you're already showing your work in group shows with that gallery in particular? Do they acknowledge artists until and only if they're fully developed and selling out? Galleries want artists to understand that business means to have a relationship, but seems as if that means the girlfriend can treat the boyfriend poorly. I've only one single time in 10 years of a career treated as a human being by one curator. That leaves artists with many feelings toward the whole industry. Yeah, in other words, why are galleries, why do many galleries and gallery owners have a, let's call it, less than congenial relationship with some of the artists, maybe with whom they're working, or artists who are approaching them looking for representation? And I think that this question and the kind of sentiment leads to an incorrect perception that I think gallery owners and sometimes artists have about the business, that I believe is a really a detriment to both. And that is that somehow galleries are the ones that hold all the power and are the gatekeepers and the key holders of the business, and that they therefore have power. And this imbalance is created because certainly the numbers would show that there are many more artists than there are galleries out there, and many more artists than there would be space for artists in galleries. And therefore the gallery is in the position that holds the leverage. And sure, that there is some certainly some reality to that equation, but I have found, and in my interactions with other gallery owners over the years, I found that those gallery owners who don't look at the business that way, who realize that they would not be in business were it not for the artists that they're working with, and that you never know when the next artist you're interacting with is going to end up being, a critical component to the growth of your business. That if you look at the business that way, if you really take it as a partnership and strive to build strong, positive relationships with the artists that you're working with, and to be positive and friendly, even though you can't represent every single artist that you talk to, and you're not going to be able to have those kinds of relationships with everyone. But if you have that approach to the business, you are going to be far more successful. The artists that you're working with are going to get you better artwork. That attitude is going to bleed over into your relationships with your clients. And it's just all around going to be more positive. And so, Vanessa, I don't want to downplay what you're saying. Certainly, I know that there are those kinds of experiences. Everyone has different personalities and different approaches. And frankly, there are artists that I represent when I'm having conversations with them and they talk about some of the other galleries they're working with. Sometimes the relationship is different and more, or let's say it this way, it's less of a warm, friendly, fuzzy relationship, but it's still able to be successful because those gallery owners have found their niche and work well with their clients. And even though they're not as communicative and there's not as much back and forth, it's still positive. And so, Vanessa, what I would say is I would just encourage you to keep pushing and keep looking for new relationships with galleries that can generate a better understanding and a better partnership with you. And that as you do that, you will find that you can find those relationships that are positive and generate sales and are a win-win for both you and the gallery. This next question comes from Frank in Durango, Colorado. And it's a great question, especially considering current circumstances. Do you ever do a gallery-wide sale where everything is marked down a certain percentage? And if not, what's your logic? I own a gallery from which I exclusively sell my landscape and wildlife photography. My gallery is located in a tourist town. In light of COVID-19 impact on tourism, I've considered a summer sale online and in my gallery to boost sales. And certainly, I'm sure not only for gallery owners but for artists as well. The current certainly economic situation, the turmoil in the retail market at large over the last several months has put a lot of us in a position where we're asking this question: should we be doing additional promotional sales and looking for different avenues for generating sales during these difficult times? And I subscribe to a number of galleries' email lists, and I've seen galleries taking different approaches to this. Some, like Frank suggests, offering dramatic discounts to their customers. And I'm talking, when I say dramatic, I'm talking about 25, 30, 35% discounts on retail prices. I've seen other galleries that are doing auctions of artwork with very low reserves, and just a variety of different approaches to make efforts to generate some sales during a downtime. And as we were going into the enforced social distancing and lockdowns and all those kind of things, we certainly had those conversations. I can't tell you what you should necessarily do, but ultimately what we decided was that rather than focus on discounts and dropping prices and those kind of things, that we were just going to redouble our efforts to really stay connected with our collectors, to offer them exciting new artwork, even though the gallery was physically closed and they couldn't come and see it. And so, I've shared on the blog some of those efforts are video tours, dramatic increases in the number of newsletters that we're sending out, social media presence. And really, we did not focus much on pricing. Sure, there were some clients who contacted us and said, we're interested in this piece. Is there anything you can do? And there was some negotiation that occurred, but really it was happening kind of on the same level and in the same percentages that it would during a normal market. And for us, we saw that, our sales declined pretty dramatically during the time, but we were still making sales and in a number of sales at regular prices. And for us, that focus just on having great artwork out there was the benefit. My concern with fire sales and discounts, is that I don't really want to train my customers, my clients and collectors. I don't want to train them to wait for those kinds of events. Um, and that's a concern, that if they know that they will be getting an email from me with a 30% discount offered, why would they buy at other times? And I just don't want to kind of get into that. The other thing that I find is that, um, for our clientele, at least, it's really not typically so much about the price tag. I mean, if you think about it, the value of art is fairly arbitrary. And so, going from a $5,000 to a $4,000 price tag, yeah, that decline is significant, but $4,000 is still $4,000. And if someone's in the mode to buy and is excited about a piece of artwork, I want to keep the focus there. So, um, could you experiment with it? Potentially, yes. And I'm not opposed to maybe taking part of your mailing list and trying promotional efforts to them, or doing it for a limited time to people who are coming through the door. But I I hesitate to rely on that too much, because I feel that it damages the perceived value of the artwork, and it puts me in a position that when the market does come back, and we're getting back into things, I've now, damaged the perception of the value of the art in the collector's eyes. And so I want to be very careful about that. And I'll be doing some posts on the blog in the next week or so, kind of giving some updates about what we're seeing. And frankly, we've seen some significant sales across a wide range of price points for the gallery. We are also seeing that our clients are somewhat insulated from, not all of them, obviously, but some of our clients are somewhat insulated from shocks to the stock market and the economy at large. And so we've just not put our focus there. I would put my focus on really cultivating those relationships with your collectors and keeping great artwork in front of them. If anything, I would say, rather than discount, redouble your efforts to be in more frequent communication with your collectors. Okay. This question somehow, it's from Lily in Forest Grove. And kind of relates to the question we had from Sandy earlier. And that is, says, is it acceptable for an artist to have two very different series styles selling at two separate galleries located some distance from each other? Plus, since the styles are so different, is it recommended that the artist use a slightly different name? And then gives an example: Floral Series by Betty Sue Jones at Gallery A, an Abstract Series by B.S. Jones at Gallery B. I certainly know artists who have taken this approach. If they are pursuing very distinctive styles of work, it can make sense to separate them out. We've talked about this in the critique sessions, where we really want to create consistency. And if you've got two bodies of work that are very distinctive and would have difficulty showing together, it might be worth considering separating them out. And this idea of using different names, I've seen artists use complete pseudonyms that would totally separate them. Certainly, you could consider doing that. I would just say that, and it kind of again goes back to that conversation earlier with Sandy, and that is that it's probably going to be difficult to build successful followings and sales and produce inventory for both of those in both of those lines simultaneously. It's hard enough to be one successful artist, and now you're trying to be two successful artists. My suggestion is that you really focus on the one or the other, build that up, create success there, find galleries and get a following going. And then as you find time, as you find that you've kind of gotten into a groove with that body of work and are selling it at the pace that you would want to, then maybe you consider expanding the other line of work. I know very few artists, like I say, I've seen artists do this, but almost always in the instances that I can think of, one or the other bodies of work almost always seems to take off and draw more of the artist's time and focus and attention. And so it's a good idea to kind of start there, and keep the focus in one or the other. This question is from Christian, and I see I've got Christian here in the video stream. So can I bring you in and just have you? We'll talk about the commission that you were working on. And Christian, if you can unmute yourself, you should see a note there. There we go. I think
Okay.
I've got you.
Yeah. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Great.
Yeah, I did a commission right at when COVID started. I had finished it, but the place, it's a very nice restaurant where it was going to closed. So I got 50% of the commission, but now they're not reopening. And, it's kind of hard to get in touch with them.
Yeah. Yeah, this is certainly a challenging situation and unique circumstances, to say the least. Do you get the sense that the restaurant will be reopening at some point? Does it seem like it doesn't seem like, in other words, it doesn't seem like they've gone out of business or are not going to be opening?
Yeah, I think they will. I'm just not sure when. I think that they're probably trying to figure out when it's a good time for them to reopen.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and so unfortunately, this is and this is one of the challenges that comes with commissioned artwork, and why it's always a good idea to ask for that 50% deposit up front. This would be an even more challenging situation if the artwork had just been created on spec without any deposit. And in all likelihood, if this were my gallery handling the commission, I would be taking a position of patience, just knowing that there are a lot of variables at play. Certainly, the gallery, or excuse me, the restaurant's cash flow will have been deeply impacted. Their plans for getting opened, and so. You don't want to let the project fall by the wayside, and it is a good idea to reach out. But in my communication, what I would say is, I understand that these are very challenging times, and there is no rush on this. I just wanted to touch base and let you know that the work is finished. It will be ready when you are ready. Please let me know, or please provide me with status updates as you're able to. I'm here for you, and just let me know how I can be of service. And just kind of take that approach. And it could be a while. You could imagine a scenario where a restaurant owner is saying, boy, my cash flow has dropped off. I'm trying to bring back my employees, and the restaurant decoration and updates and stuff like that are just not going to be the highest priority for right now. And you probably just need to kind of ride that out. Now, Christian, I would assume you still have the artwork. And so, in that sense, you can just kind of, that's your insurance policy that you're going to get paid. But unfortunately, it's just going to require, I think, some patience.
Right. Yeah. Your approach is pretty much what I'm doing, I think.
Yeah, perfect. I would just echo then that that's the right approach to take. And our approach is always to keep things friendly and warm and service oriented, and to avoid anything that feels demanding or puts a potential bump in the relationship with the potential customer.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes. Our next question comes, let me get us back over there, comes from Jeline in Canada. Jeline says, I'm not gallery represented, nor am I currently approaching galleries for representation. However, I do apply to juried shows, competitions, where they charge a commission on work sold. Do not currently have a commission allowance worked into my pricing formula. I go by size, and don't feel comfortable with what I would receive for my work if sold after the fee is taken out. I'm not sure if I should raise my prices to accommodate the gallery fees, as I've not sold anything for nearly 2 years, despite my increased efforts. So there's a lot at play here, and pricing questions certainly present some challenges, no matter what the scenario is. But Jolene, what I would suggest is that it sounds to me like you are thinking of the value of your work. I would suggest in kind of the wrong way. Um, Whenever I think about the value of artwork, again, whether an artist is selling it directly or it's being sold through a gallery, there are two distinct components of that value. And that's the value that's created by the artist as that artist is employing all their creativity and talent and skill in creating the artwork. And so that's part of the value. And then the other part of the value is created by all of the efforts to market, promote, and sell the artwork. And those come together, those two values come together to create the price of the artwork. And if as you're telling me, you haven't really allowed for commissions, what you're saying is you are not valuing either for yourself or for the gallery the effort that it takes to sell the work. You've really only valued it at that creation value. So there are kind of two ways to think of that. One is, well, if I sell it at its current price, I won't be making that commission, but I also won't have been doing as much of the work to generate the sale. Or if I need to increase the value, I need to do that so that I'm also compensating myself if I am doing all the work and generating the sales myself. Certainly, the second big variable here is you're saying, well, I haven't sold anything for a couple of years despite increased efforts. And that tells me that this may not be an issue of the value of the artwork as much as it is an issue of finding the right venues for showing and selling that work. Whatever those efforts have been over the last several years, it sounds like you want to move in different directions, approach different galleries, look at different shows, and put forth increased effort in finding the right clientele for your artwork. And I would focus on that before I worried about my price points. In other words, your price points are insignificant and if you're not able to find buyers for that artwork, and you might even take a loss on some of your sales in terms of your time and materials just to get some of those sales started, and then you can start optimizing your price point. Casey from Scottsdale says, how many pieces should you show on your website total in a given collection? And for older pieces, should you archive or delete these works? We're going to have a lot to talk about when it comes to websites, and I'm just going to try and hit it briefly. But when it comes to your website, you do have some latitude to show a variety of works. I recommend for a portfolio that you're going to be showing to galleries or to collectors that you'd want to narrow your focus and probably not show more than 25 or 30 pieces. But on a website, you can be more expansive. And that a collector is interested and will spend some time, and they're in control of what they're looking at on your website. So I visited artist websites that have as many as 60 and 100 pieces of artwork divided into different categories, and I don't think that's too many. In terms of in a given collection, again, the same thing, you have some latitude there, but you would want to keep the focus on the website on your current body of work. So those would be the things I'd want to see first. You would want to avoid having artwork that confuses a collector. And so it kind of comes back to this question of consistency. If there is work that just does not make sense or does not fit in with your current body of work, it would make sense to archive those pieces, keep them off the website. And that kind of goes to question number 2, how many collections should you have? Certainly you can categorize the work into collections that make sense. And so I'll see artists who have figurative work, landscapes, still lifes, maybe street scenes. The style of the work is similar, but it's just the subject matter that varies. And it makes sense to organize it into those categories so there's some kind of cohesive narrative for a visitor to the website. You wouldn't want to have too many collections. Again, if it gives the collector the sense that you're not quite sure what your direction is. So 4 to 6 to 7 collections would probably make sense. I don't mind showing a variety of work, but I just don't want to enter into too much confusion. Can you have two different bodies of work on one website? Abstract and impressionism. That's going to be more of a challenge. And again, we're kind of going back to that same discussion we were having before. If they are radically different works that are going to appeal to a different clientele, showing both of those bodies of work on the website has the potential to confuse and discourage a collector. If I'm on a website and I'm interested in abstract work, but I see you've done a large body of impressionistic work, it raises questions and red flags in my mind. And so at that point, it probably would make sense to consider having two separate websites and doing the kind of divisions that we've talked about. And then the last question, must you have an MA, a Master of Arts, to be taken seriously by the art gallery circuit? No. And again, I've done blog posts on this in the past. How important is an artist's education? Are there galleries out there that are focused on academically trained, well-established artists? Sure. But they are in the minority. The vast majority of galleries out there are looking for artists who are creating exciting, interesting artwork that their clients will respond to. I will tell you that I cannot think of a single time that I have even paid attention, honestly, in the initial phases of a relationship with an artist to their academic background. And most of the artists, I do have artists who have extensive academic training, but they're in the minority in my gallery. I just do not, it is not the highest priority. And in fact, I suspect that if you were to look at the art market in general and look at artists in general, a lot of artists who pursue that kind of academic training are doing so in an effort to then work in academia. They'll be teaching or maybe going into museums and that kind of thing. And so it's just kind of a different marketplace. You'll find, though, that most galleries that you would talk to are not going to be highly concerned with that. Barbie from Sausalito, California asked, does acrylic painting and or mixed media painting sell as well as oil paintings in this day and age? With your experience, could you talk about the pros and cons of acrylic medium concerning how it affects sales? And then I'm going to throw the next question in as well. This is Alex, and he's insisting that I take a stand on this same question. I'm curious about art collector world and acceptance of acrylic painting. I can paint either and often paint with both. Expert opinion, take a stand. And he's saying that because in the past I have said, and I've said it already today, don't spend too much time worrying about that and thinking about what you're going to be creating or the subject matter. Create it, and you can find a market for it. And Alex knows that I'm likely to say the same thing about acrylics versus oils. However, I will take a stand in the sense that even in my brief time in the art market, I've been working in galleries since the early 1990s, which is putting me towards 30 years now. But I have seen a shift in the marketplace where collectors seem to be less and less concerned about having oil over acrylic. In other words, in my experience, there is a wider, broader acceptance. Really, maybe even a better way to say it would be there's just less, our clients are paying less attention to the medium. I have artists who work in both, and it very rarely comes up in discussion anymore. Whereas 30 years ago, you would see that come up in a conversation. A client would say, oh, it's acrylic. Oh, is acrylic as stable? Is it going to last? All those kinds of questions. And I just don't see that as much anymore. It almost, to me, becomes secondary to the question of what medium will allow you to best express your vision for your artwork. And certainly there are considerations that come into play there. There are different characteristics of the media. And so if oil is what allows you to do that, or you have some natural aesthetic affinity towards oil, go for it. But if you feel that acrylic is a better medium for what you're trying to achieve, I just don't perceive that as a handicap in the marketplace. Now, where you could see, I guess, potentially a little bit more feedback from your clients is if you're doing very traditional, kind of classical representational work, kind of a la Rembrandt and that kind of thing. That clientele might pay a little bit more attention just from a tradition standpoint. Those masters were working in oil. You're doing work that's in a similar vein. Are you working in oil? Even then, if acrylic is the better medium for you, I would not let that stop me from creating that work. I see I'm getting some hands up on this one. Let me hop over very quickly. And actually, what I'm going to do very quickly, I'm going to lower everybody's hands because I'm not sure if all those hands were raised to this question. And if you have a comment or a question about acrylic versus oil, go ahead and raise your hand again. Marianne, I think I see you there. Oops, I might have just muted you. Sorry about that. Do I have you? Let's try one more time. There we go. Gotcha.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe I shouldn't have raised my hand because my question was a little bit different. I work in colored pencil, which is not considered, the high and mighty oils or anything like that. We're probably on the lower end. And I had asked if I should actually switch over to calling my stuff mixed media because it seems to go a little bit better in the galleries. And so it was sort of a broadening of that question. I am a little concerned that, or should I just stay the power and be like, my stuff is awesome and you need to purchase it the way it is?
Yeah. Yes. Again, a great question. And let me put it this way. When it comes to these kinds of issues and showing and selling artwork, I am more pragmatic than I am idealistic. And so in that scenario that you're laying out, my natural reaction is to say, experiment with that. Put some work out that you're calling mixed media and other work that you're calling colored pencil or graphite, and see which gets the better response, and whichever it is, go with that. Again, I think that sometimes these kinds of issues can throw up a stumbling block when one doesn't really need to be there. On the other hand, you may find that calling it mixed media does not have a huge positive impact, and the people who are interested in your work like the fact that it is colored pencil. And I'll also just throw out that over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with some artists who have worked in graphite or colored pencil. And yes, it is more of a niche, but the clients who respond to it are fascinated by the fact that you're able to do something with a quote unquote lowly medium, like a colored pencil. You're able to do something that they just could not have imagined that you would have been able to do, and that narrative can be a selling point for them. That would kind of be my suggestion would be to experiment with both, but then also when you're selling the work that you're labeled as colored pencil, emphasize it. Hey, this is colored pencil. Here are the challenges of working with this medium. Here's how I've overcome some of those challenges, and really invite them into that story and get the conversation going. And then they will become your biggest advocates. Look at what this amazing artist that I just bought, look at what she's able to do with, colored pencils.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Let me go to Alexandra. I think I've got you there. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. Good morning.
Good morning. Do you hear me?
Yep. Got you loud and clear.
Great, great. I'm very glad. Thank you very much for your group critique and questions. My question about oil and acrylic is always struggling as well. I do love oil because it lets to work with this because it lets experiment longer time. It's just drying longer. And this exists another one that's water-based oil paintings, oil paints. And and this actually the only reason why I don't like oil, because of this is not very good for health to breathe it in. Even I use sounds outdoor medias. Still, it's question and exists a water-based oil. But do you know about this? So I think you do. What do you think? Is it solution?
You know, it is interesting that, you know, in some ways you would look at art and art history and you would see these long arcs of, you know, the developments of style and different media. But we are seeing some acceleration in terms of the, it's not exactly the technology, but the makers of the media, oil and acrylics and everything in between, are experimenting, and it's in their interest to innovate and evolve some of those media to create new media, but also to take some of the old media and kind of innovate on that and create, give you new characteristics and properties to those media. Again, my answer is going to be the same, and that is it makes sense to do some experimentation. And if you find that you know, water-based oils are a better medium for you, I just don't see any reason not to use those media if the manufacturers are you know, have done the testing and find that those media are going to stand the test of time. And that really ultimately is what it comes down to, is execution. Is the medium going to allow me to execute my vision? And two, longevity. Is this medium going to hold up and retain its quality for the long term? And, you know, realizing that your artwork is going to be around, hopefully for a very, very long time. And we want to make sure that the media that you're selecting are going to withstand that. You know, as you look at the marketing materials for these different innovative media, you'll see that this is that the manufacturers are perfectly aware of this, and they are going to emphasize the longevity and the positive characteristics of their media. And so you know, we can rely on that, and if it's allowing us to create great works of art, I just don't see any problem to that. And by the way, as I look around my gallery, especially Scottsdale, Pine Top, we do lean a little bit more traditional, and I do have probably a higher ratio of oil versus other media. But if I look at my Scottsdale gallery, oil paintings are in the minority. The majority of the work in Scottsdale is mixed media or acrylic based, and as I say, it has just not been a stumbling block for our collectors, and rarely is it ever a discussion beyond, you know, some will ask, what's the medium? We'll let them know. They're happy to know, and we move on from there. I did not get, as typical for these sessions, I got to about 2/3 of the questions that came in. And so I know that there were some of your questions that you were hoping I was going to get to today that I just did not get to. Be patient with me. Submit those questions again. Some of you, I know, this was a second time submitting your questions. Hang in there. Watch. I'll be doing these sessions every month, and so you'll get an opportunity a month from now to resubmit those questions, and I will work to get to as many of them as we can. Again, I just remind you also that if you're interested in submitting your work for review in a critique session, the link is on the broadcast page now. I'd encourage you and invite you to go ahead and submit there. We'll plan on seeing you next Wednesday, same time, same place, as we review another artist's work. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.